Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Simon Miller. I am a SNAP program analyst here at the Food and Nutrition Service. I will be presenting today alongside my colleagues, Megan Smith and Hallie Nelson. They're also program analysts. We'll also be joined today by our grants officer, Anna Aerosmith. That'll come later in the presentation. During this call, we're going to discuss basic information and application requirements for the process and technology improvement grants, which I will refer to in this webinar by the acronym PTIGs. So before we begin, I'll just let everyone know again that the webinar is being recorded. The PowerPoint presentation, as well as the audio from the webinar, will be posted under the PTIG section of the FNS public website. All your phone lines are muted. And participants are in listen-only mode for this webinar. We welcome you to use the chat, the Q&A feature in the WebEx to ask your questions throughout the webinar, and we will respond to as many as we are able to throughout, and we'll try to tackle some of those questions at the end if there are a lot of remaining. And if we don't have the answers for your questions today, we'll do our best to make sure that we get you the answers at a later time. So we've included a lot of information in this webinar, but all of it's going to be in the RFA, and we'll provide the slides in an email after the webinar. Again, everything's going to be on the FNS website, so it'll be easy for you to access. So let's get started. Today we'll be talking about basic information about the purpose of this grant and who can apply for funding. We'll be talking about funding priority areas for this year's grant competition. We'll be talking about the review criteria that will be used by the evaluators to assess applications. We'll talk about application submission procedures, and then we'll answer your questions at the end of the webinar. So what is the purpose of the PTIG grant competition? It's to, the purpose of the grant competition is to develop and implement projects that focus on improving the quality and efficiency of SNAP operations and processes. So who is eligible? State agencies that administer SNAP, right? That's the 50 state agencies along with DC, Guam, and the Virgin Islands. State or local governments, agencies that provide health or welfare services, public health or educational entities, and private nonprofit entities, which include community-based or faith-based organizations, food banks, or other emergency feeding organizations. As you can see, there is a broad swath of entities that may apply for a PTIG. So just some basic award information that we want to provide you. PTIGs are subject to the availability of funds, right? Up to $5 million will be available for this year's competition. Grants are awarded through a competitive process. So in other words, submitting a proposal does not guarantee that funding will be received. There's no cost sharing and no cost matching required. And the funding amount per award is dependent on the number of awards granted. So in a typical year, we anticipate that we award anywhere between 6 and 11 grants. The anticipated funding level per award can range pretty broadly, but usually is between $20,000 and $2 million. But just a note that in the past we've awarded grantees less funds than that they requested in their proposal. Sometimes this occurs because of something that a grantee requested in their funds didn't align with the priority areas or the goals of the project, of the RFA. And a note, the project period is for 3 years. And if the activities of the project, if the activities funded under this grant are part of a larger eligibility system project with total projected costs exceeding $6 million, an advanced planning document must be submitted and approved prior to the expenditure of these grants funds. Guidance on the APD process can be found on the FNS website. So let's go over some of the funding restrictions so some of the funding restrictions that exist for all grantees. The pre-award cost will not be awarded. That is costs incurred prior to the grant project period beginning. Funds are intended for new projects only. They can't be used for ongoing costs of existing projects. Projects that are predicated on waiving SNAP regulations are not allowable. The funds can only be used for SNAP's share of project costs. And finally, the project cannot devote more than 25% of the requested grant funds to outreach activities, such as informational materials, pure application assistance, screening, pre-qualifying applicants, or activities whose purpose is to attract or recruit SNAP applicants. This is in alignment with overall SNAP outreach guidance. So some key SNAP dates, key dates for the grant. So completed grant proposals along with all necessary forms must be uploaded onto grants.gov by June 22nd at 11:59 p.m. FNS will announce the recipients of this year's grants no later than September 30th, 2021. And the proposed period of the project period of the award is 3 years. So beginning at award through September of 2024. And now I'm going to mute myself and pass it over to Holly Nelson.
Simon, we're now going to discuss the new racial equity and inclusion section of the In alignment with USDA priorities, this year's RFA features a new section on racial equity and inclusion in order to advance equity by reducing systemic barriers for the historically underserved and marginalized through improving access for all SNAP clients. The new section requires applicants to clearly outline the project's potential impacts on racial equity and inclusion and to include analysis of the project's impacts to specific underserved communities relevant. The RFA includes guiding questions and project examples for incorporating this section into your proposal. Explicit answers to the questions are not required. Rather, the questions are there to assist in crafting meaningful applications. While all proposals are required to outline and analyze how the project will impact racial equity and inclusion, it is not required that the proposal have a significant impact in this area.
Holly, can I just pause you for 1 second? I'm just getting a couple notes that folks are having trouble hearing you.
Okay.
Would you mind speaking closer into your microphone?
Yeah, is this better?
Definitely, for me, it's better.
Okay. I'll start where I left off. While all proposals are required to outline and analyze how the project will impact racial equity and inclusion, it is not required that the proposal have a significant impact in this area. For proposals that do demonstrate the ability to affect a meaningful impact on racial equity and inclusion, up to 3 bonus points will be awarded. We'll discuss this more in the bonus points section later. This year's RFA includes extensive lists of guiding questions and project examples to help develop meaningful proposals. Some guiding questions include, what forms of diversity, such as racial, gender, cultural, citizenship status, linguistic, or other, do you think strengthen the quality of the proposal and why? Or, how do you propose to draw upon diverse perspectives in the community or field that the proposed work will serve? Some example projects include projects that reduce technological or process-based barriers to entry for vulnerable populations such as individuals with disabilities, LGBTQ+ persons, and limited English proficiency populations, as an example. Proposals from community-based organizations and/or faith-based organizations that work directly with and are comprised of members from the community they serve. Or proposals that identify a specific strategy to increase equity in the SNAP application process. We'll now discuss this year's PTIG funding priorities. The funding priorities for this grant competition change each year based on FNS agency priorities and SNAP program needs. This year, projects should prioritize increasing the use of human-centered design in SNAP applications and notices, improving preparedness for public health emergency and pandemic response by strengthening virtual and disaster response operations and improving SNAP customer service responsiveness and effectiveness. In designing projects to address these priority areas, applicants should consider using innovative ideas to solve both common and unique problems. Also, proposals must identify how one or more SNAP certification processes will be improved as a result of the project. For example, proposals should explain how the project will improve application intake, application screening, interviews, notices, verifications, client reporting, recertification, client complaints, or the fair hearing process. Priority Area 1 focuses on projects that center the user when designing the project. The user could be a SNAP client, caseworker, or other stakeholder. Such projects improve ease of access to and administration of SNAP. You can find more about human-centered design using the link in the RFA and in this slide. Here's a brief definition for you. Human-centered design, also referred to as user-centered design, is a methodology that incorporates feedback from the people for whom you are designing throughout the design process. The goal of human-centered design is to end up with a solution that is tailored to meet people's needs with little wasted effort and reduced risk. Specific projects could include making applications easier to understand, shorter, or more user-friendly, or conducting user testing to make notices or application questions more applicable to the client and reduce errors. Priority Area 2 focuses on improving preparedness for public health emergency and pandemic response. Proposals that target this priority will improve day-to-day SNAP operations and increase the adaptability and responsiveness of SNAP processes. Such projects could include improvements to telephonic interview and signature capabilities, development or enhancement of virtual call centers, modernization of verification processing, or staff training for disaster and pandemic response. Next slide. Priority Area 3 is improving SNAP customer service. These projects improve both the responsiveness and effectiveness of customer service. Such projects could include strengthening partnerships with community partners, collaborating with stakeholders in user testing or focus groups, or engaging in business process improvement efforts that enhance the client experience. Like last year, this year's RFA also includes an interest in projects that include public-private partnerships, or PPPs. There are no bonus points for PPPs. However, this year's RFA includes a new, more specific definition. For the purpose of these grants, PPPs of particular interest leverage expertise from outside the public sector to strengthen services to increase access for SNAP clients or test new technologies that benefit both public and private partners. The RFA includes the FY20 award for the San Francisco Human Services Agency as an example of a project featuring a PPP. The agency partners with a University of Chicago professor on human-centered design principles. Project proposals that rely on contractors are allowable, but they are not considered PPPs. As I previously mentioned, up to 3 bonus points may be awarded to proposals that demonstrate an ability to effect a meaningful impact on racial equity and inclusion. Proposals can demonstrate a meaningful impact in many ways. Some examples of ways to demonstrate impact are conducting analysis of systemic barriers to SNAP access for underserved or marginalized communities served by the proposal, or incorporating specific measures into the project design that will work to reduce systemic barriers from a structural standpoint. Bonus points are also awarded to proposals that are data-driven and proposals that collaborate with a previous grantee. Up to 3 bonus points are available for proposals that are particularly data-driven. This may include projects that plan to incorporate user experience testing or conduct surveys, interviews, or other data collection pre-proposal to demonstrate the project need. Up to 3 bonus points are available for proposals that collaborate with a previous PTIG grantee during the process. Examples of collaboration include discussing best practices and lessons learned, identifying helpful tools and strategies for the project plan and execution, or receiving feedback on or assistance in developing a project plan. So, as a reminder, up to 9 bonus points are available for the racial equity and inclusion component, data-driven proposals, and collaboration with previous PTIG grantees. To recap, all applications must support efforts by state agencies and community-based or faith-based partners to develop and implement projects that focus on improving the quality and efficiency of SNAP operations and processes. Grant proposals must be submitted to grants.gov by Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021 by 11:59 p.m. Eastern. The RFA includes a detailed checklist that will help applicants ensure their proposals meet all necessary requirements. This is under Roman numeral 3 of the RFA. Please take time to read and review the RFA in full. I'll now pass it over to my colleague Megan.
Thanks, Hallie. Just to reiterate Hallie's point, the RFA does include a detailed checklist that will help applicants ensure their proposal includes all of the requirements. So now we'll go over the review criteria that proposals will be judged on. A review panel will be convened to evaluate proposals that are successfully submitted to grants.gov by the deadline. The review criteria will include the following sections: racial equity and inclusion, project design, organizational experience, staff capability and management, budget appropriateness and economic efficiency, and additional bonus point sections. Incomplete or late proposals will not be considered. The review criteria discussed in this webinar is based on the application content that is outlined in the RFA. For more information, please see the RFA posted on grants.gov. The review panel will evaluate each grant application based on how well it addresses each of the following evaluation criteria. As a reminder, the new racial equity inclusion section. As a reminder, this new section requires applicants to clearly outline the project's potential impacts on racial equity and inclusion and include analysis of the project's impacts to specific underserved communities where relevant. The RFA includes guiding questions and project examples for incorporating this section into your proposal. Explicit answers to the questions are not required. Rather, the questions are there to assist in crafting meaningful applications. While all proposals are required to outline and analyze how the project will impact racial equity and inclusion, it is not required that the proposal have a significant impact in this area. Proposals that do demonstrate the ability to affect a meaningful impact on racial equity and inclusion will be awarded up to 3 bonus points. So now we'll go over a few examples. A bad example might include the proposal only includes statistics on how marginalized people are affected, but does not include analysis on how the project will reduce systematic barriers to SNAP access for underserved or marginalized communities. Or the proposal focuses on one group, for example, limited English proficiency communities, but does not show the full scope of the project and its impact on other marginalized communities. A good example would include well-researched data that speaks to the structural inequities and provides an in-depth analysis on the project's projected impact and outcomes on reducing access to SNAP. Another good example may include the grantee partners with community organizations that are well-positioned to reach people with particularly significant barriers to accessing support. As we go through additional criteria over the next few slides, we want to also apply this criteria to a sample project to help you better understand that we will be looking for to analyze proposals. We strongly encourage applicants not to copy this project verbatim for your state. However, innovative, well-researched projects of this type are welcome to enter the grant competition. The example project we will use for discussion purposes is creating a worker dashboard to better monitor applications. project design. First part of the review criteria that I'm going to talk through is the project design section. This section is the most heavily weighted section of the evaluation criteria. This section essentially contains an analysis of the problem and how the project you're proposing will help solve the problem. The proposal should include and clearly describe the problem that will be solved and provide evidence that the proposed approach is well suited to solve the identified issue. Program design section should include 1. Program analysis, 2. Impact, 3. Implementation, 4. Sustainability, and lastly, letters of commitment or endorsement. The RFA offers specific criteria for the project design section. Now we will go through a few good and bad examples for folks' awareness. A bad example might include the proposal identifies what will be created, for example, the worker dashboard, but does not include evidence of why it is needed. Or a proposal identifies what will be created, again, the worker dashboard, but does not include how the dashboard will be implemented. And lastly, a proposal includes the letters of commitment / endorsement, but they're perfunctory or template-based. Some good examples might include the proposal lays out how the dashboard will improve application processing timeliness for the project area / state, include measurable and attainable quantifiable goals in the project. The full project timeline is included, showing sufficient time is allocated for each activity, and the letters of commitment or endorsement are personalized, and they show the foundation of a good, strong partnership. A letter of commitment is required if the grant proposal is from a state agency working in partnership with another organization. The letters of commitment must describe the organization's role in the project and the amount of time the partner organization intends to commit to the project, and an attestation that it will cooperate with the grant applicant in implementing the project. Also, a quick note on letters that may be required for you to submit with the proposal. If a state agency submits an application in partnership with other organizations, the state must provide a letter of commitment from the proposed partner. State agencies submitting an application on their own do not need a letter of commitment. Letters must be included in the grant application package. In years past, we said these could be forwarded to the grants officers. Now we are requiring this document to be included in the application package itself. A letter of endorsement is required if an applicant is not partnering with the state agency. The state agency's letter of endorsement must explain the state agency is aware of the projected impact on its eligibility system and is supportive of the project. It must also acknowledge whether the project creates any additional work for the state agency and identify the state agency's capacity to address this work. Lastly, describe how the project will support the state's current or planned technology and/or business process improvement efforts and priorities. Also, FNS welcomes grant proposals from entities other than a state agency. Such applicants must demonstrate that the state agency strongly endorses and/or is involved in the proposed project through a letter of endorsement. It must also describe how the project will support the state's current or planned technology improvement efforts and priorities. As with the letter of commitment, these letters must also be included in the grant application package. The next review criteria we will discuss is organizational experience, staff capability, and management. The narrative provided in the proposal should provide enough detail for reviewers to easily understand who is managing this project and the time commitment it will involve. The proposal should also include a detailed internal and, if applicable, external communications plan. Now we will go through a couple of examples to better understand how this criteria will be evaluated. Bad example may include employees who work on the project are listed, however, their specific roles are not listed in the application. No staff resumes or job descriptions are included, and/or the communications plan just mentions that they will do regular check-ins. No other internal communication is mentioned. A good example may include a proposal clearly identifies all the parties to be involved with a short project job description. for each and percentage of the time they will devote to the project. Communications plan includes when each team members will check in with each other, and the topics will also be generally discussed. Now, I will pass the mic over to Simon, who will go over additional review criteria.
Thanks, Megan. Okay, so the next review criteria we're going to look at is evaluation. In addition to prioritizing cost effectiveness and demonstrating that the anticipated results are commensurate with the cost of the project, FNS is looking for proposals that include comprehensive evaluation plans. Evaluation plans should address who will measure the project goals, what criteria will be evaluated, and at what intervals during the grant period evaluation will occur. Oh, I went backwards. No, forwards. Sorry about that. So there are two components that should be included in the evaluation: the activities tracker and metrics for overall success. The activities tracker measures the process and maps the progress of grant activities. Indicators should be included to measure the success of the project at achieving the program objectives of the priority areas you chose. For example, let's say the proposed activity for your project is to provide iPads to lobby staff. I know that's something that may not be happening right now, but just go with me here. So your project meets the objectives of improving customer service. So two example indicators that you could use in the activities tracker would be the purchase of the number of iPads and adding wireless connectivity to some of your buildings. Overall success of the project should also be measured through outcomes, and the outcomes should outline how the overall success will be measured once the project is complete. For this example, two outcomes could be reduction in lobby wait times and increases in completed tasks in the lobby, which both contribute to improved customer service. So I want to say this: activities tracker, the activities tracker is required. I'll say it again, it's in red. The activities tracker is required. Please use the format that's provided in the RFA. So let's go over some good and bad examples of evaluation. So for the bad example, right, we have an evaluation plan that's one paragraph. It discusses that at the completion of the dashboard creation, that dashboard that we talked about earlier, caseworkers will be surveyed for feedback. In this first example, it's not rigorous, right? So let's look at this good example. So in the good example, the evaluation plan is detailed. It includes pre and post dashboard launch surveys from caseworkers. It measures targets for triaging applications for expediting and those that have been waiting the longest. The evaluation plan includes use of in-house or contracted out evaluation consultant for a most rigorous analysis. So why such a focus on evaluation, right? Both we, FNS, and you, the applicant and potential grantee, we want your proposed projects to work. And if they're successful, then we want to be able to, share out with others in our PTIG community. So let's talk about, budget appropriateness and economic efficiency. The second most heavily weighted item we'll be scoring your proposals on is your budget appropriateness and economic efficiency. Proposals submissions which omit the required budget forms, budget narratives, or line item descriptions will not receive the full point value for this criterion. Therefore, applicants should recognize that a well-written budget narrative which justifies the proposed project expenditures assists reviewers during the review process. So the RFA outlines additional requirements if proposals include indirect costs, projects that include programs other than SNAP, larger budgets, and nonprofit applicants or partners. Information about these items, should the proposal include them, should be within your budget section as well. One more note about budget appropriateness and economic efficiency. So applicants that are required to issue bids should provide a narrative explaining the requirement and provide a reasonable estimate of contractual and consultant costs. This slide lists what specific information about consultant or contract workers should be included in your proposal. And again, this information would be found in the RFA. So let's just show one more good and bad example here. So a bad example, a line item budget narrative formatted in a table is non-descriptive. Items from the budget checklist in the RFA are missing from the line item budget narrative, or justification isn't provided for the cost estimates. A good example, right? The line item budget narrative addresses reasoning for all the consultants or employees involved, equipment, supply purchases, and explanation of how costs were estimated. A good example would include, if there are travel costs are all inclusive and the justification for travel is provided. So just a few things to consider. We have included a budget checklist in the RFA to help applicants demonstrate to the review panel that they have put effort into determining what they will need to spend and for what purpose. It seems simple, but sometimes budgets clearly lack simple items that are mentioned elsewhere in the proposal, which can hurt your score. So please be sure to take the time and make sure that all components of your proposal are in alignment. So let's talk about the presentation review criteria. The last review criteria is presentation, right? Presentation seems easy, and it is, as long as you take the time to double check before submission. The project description should be no more than 25 pages. This does not include the cover sheet, the table of contents, or the required forms or other appendices. All pages, excluding the form pages, must be numbered. And I'll just make one final note on the executive summary. It should not exceed 1 page, and a few other things, which are listed in the RFA. The executive summary should talk about the specific problem that prompted the applicant to submit the grant application, how the project would solve the identified problem, the eligible entities involved in the project, the amount of funding requested, the priority areas the proposal addresses, the SNAP processes that will be improved by the project, and if the applicant has received any FNS grant in the last 3 years. Again, all of those things are in the RFA to help guide you in crafting a one-page executive summary. So just a final reminder that there is opportunity to earn up to 9 bonus points in your proposal for a score beyond a possible 100. And that's demonstrating a meaningful impact on racial equity and inclusion. That's for proposals that are particularly data-driven, and again, for proposals that demonstrate a plan to collaborate with a previous PTIG grantee. And now I'm going to pass it over to our grants officer, Anna Aerosmith.
Thanks, Simon. Okay, I'm going to give you a little bit of information on the logistics and how to submit your application. Next slide, please. Okay. Before I came to FNS, I used to write grants, and I know it's a lot of work and it's mostly not fun. So the worst feeling that I could imagine in that scenario is going through all the work of putting together an application and then finding out that I couldn't submit it on time. So what I want to do is go over some of the pre-application requirements, which are also addressed in more depth beginning on page 6 of the RFA. The first thing that you'll need to do if you don't already have one is obtain a DUNS number. It can take several days to obtain a DUNS number, so I recommend getting started on that right away if you don't have one. Once you have your DUNS number, you're going to need to register in the System for Award Management, or we fondly call it SAM.gov. And then once you register at sam.gov, that adds at least 2 more days to the process. And you have to have a valid SAM registration at least 3 days prior to the application due date. Then, once you're set up in SAM, you're going to need to register with grants.gov, which can take an additional 3 to 5 business days. So if you do all that math, you'll see that you have some upfront work to do before you can submit your application through grants.gov. I would suggest getting started with that part of it right away, but no later than 3 weeks before you plan to submit your application. I'm going to go ahead and guess that most applicants will already have a DUNS number, but if you've never applied for a federal grant before, you probably aren't registered in sam.gov or on grants.gov. So please allow yourself enough time to check these off your list early on. I've already received questions from people that the apply button is grayed out, and that means most likely that your registration with grants.gov is not complete. So you want to take care of that as soon as you can. Let's see. All applicants must follow the grants.gov guidance on file naming conventions. To avoid submission issues, we want you to please follow the guidance provided in the frequently asked questions section on grants.gov. In particular, you want to limit the character length of your file names. So you don't want FY 2021 SNAP budget narrative for XYZ state and XYZ county, and it just goes on and on and on. And, you know, that can cause some problems with the system. We don't want any files to inadvertently become corrupted because of that. And you also want to avoid using special characters like the ampersand, hyphen, apostrophe, or any of the other characters shown on this slide. It just leaves room for technical glitches and errors, and grants.gov doesn't like them, so we don't want you to use them. And oftentimes we'll get last minute errors where applications have not been filed by the deadline, and they're often due to these simple errors. So please make sure to ensure that you're following all of the naming conventions that are noted on grants.gov. The next thing are the required forms. So this SF424 or the standard forms 424 family they're available on grants.gov, and there's a tab on the grants.gov page entitled Forms, and all of the forms that you'll need are listed there. In the RFA and in the grants.gov application workspace environment, some of the forms are listed as where applicable. So I want to go over which ones are applicable to you and which ones are required. All applicants are required to fill out all the forms on this slide. The SF424 family of forms are required, and you actually can't even get through the application process without completing these. Grants.gov will stop you. The SFLLL form is for lobbying activities. Like the vast majority, if not all, of the applicants I've dealt with, we're going to assume that you don't lobby, but it's still a required form. So I get a lot of questions about this. What you want to do is fill in your agency or organization's information at the top, and then in the other required fields, just write "we do not lobby." And then there's a section at the bottom for you to digitally sign, and you'll need to do that. So that's sort of a workaround for the lobbying form. And then the AD 1047, it deals with debarment and suspension, and it's also required of all applicants. And then, in addition to the required forms on the previous slide, state agencies are required to complete the AD 1052, which certifies that yours is a drug-free workplace. And then for non-state agency applicants, the AD 1049 is another version of the drug-free workplace form. The AD 3030, if you are a corporation, including nonprofit corporations, you'll need to complete the AD 3030. These forms are all in the application package on grants.gov, and they're also at the link at the bottom of this slide. And then one of the other forms that everybody must complete is the Grant Program Accounting System and Financial Capability Questionnaire. How is that for a government titled document? The questionnaire is a risk assessment tool that we use to look at your financial history, review any findings that may have come up in an audit, or any other red flags that would impact award or how funds are distributed upon award. The questionnaire is on pages 27 to 29 of the RFA, but I've also uploaded a fillable version under the Related Documents tab within the grant opportunity on grants.gov. So you can use that version, fill it in electronically, and then upload it with your other attachments to your grant application. And grants.gov has an incredibly helpful resource page for applicants. From the grants.gov homepage, if you click the applicants tab, which is circled in red here on the slide, it will take you to this page that you see on the screen. The applicant FAQs, the frequently asked questions that I mentioned earlier, they are circled in green, and that's a good place to start if you've never used grants.gov before. You'll also see that this is where you begin the registration process after you have obtained a DUNS number and registered at SAM.gov. And then there's also an option for training on how to use Workspace and submit an application. I have to say this is one of the more helpful help pages that I have seen in quite some time. And then the grants.gov help desk. So a common question I get, and one I already received today, I often get this a day or two before applications are due, which is bad. So I'm glad I got the question today. And it's regarding an applicant's inability to submit. And it'll be that the apply button is grayed out for whatever reason they can't access it. And 99% of the time it's related to an incomplete user account for grants.gov, and FNS is unable to assist with that. So like I said before, hopefully very emphatically, I strongly recommend starting the process of setting up your profile on grants.gov right away. Any issues that are related to the actual submission process for your application, they'll be handled by the grants.gov help desk. So as much as I would love to be able to help you and walk you through it, please don't reach out to me for these types of questions, as it'll just delay you getting the help you need. You can, and then I'll just say contact grants.gov, and you can reach them via this phone number or email that are on your screens. And then the reporting requirements, once grants are awarded, all of the grantees will have to submit both progress and financial reports on a quarterly basis. There is a sample FNS 908 form as an appendix to the RFA, and that's there for your reference. And that is the form that will be used for the progress reports. Upon award, we'll provide training on the use of that form and what you need to do for that. And then in addition to the progress reports, financial reports are also due quarterly and will be submitted electronically through an FNS portal. And we will also provide training to all grantees upon award for that process as well. And now I will turn it back over to Simon.
Thanks, Anna. Much appreciated. Glad you could join us today. So before we take any final questions as we start to near the end of the presentation, I just wanted to show you how to navigate to the PTIG webpage on the FNS website. Starting from the FNS homepage, you can see the screenshot here. From there, you can scroll down on the page and you'll see under Spotlights, the Process and Technology Improvement Grants Program. Click on that, and you'll be taken to this new page. We're still working on getting more materials there. But if you go to Grant Applicant Resources, you can click there and you can be directed to directly to grants.gov, or you can click on this year's RFA link, in which case you would be taken to this year's FY21 landing page. So you can come back to this homepage for a recording of the webinar. It also includes important dates for this year's RFA and any other relevant info for this year's RFA. So just some quick reference links. In case you're interested about learning about the last year's grantees, you can visit the FY20 PTIG award website to see which grants were awarded to various folks. For any questions regarding the RFA, those should be directed to Anna, the grants officer. And again, to submit your completed application, you'll do it through grants.gov by June 22nd. But just remember all of the information that Anna gave you on the DUNS and SAM. So there's a lot of pre-work to be done before you can actually get to that submission stage. And I'm just putting out our contact information here. We have a dedicated PTIG inbox for usually designed for post-award. Any questions on the RFA, again, can go to Anna. Again, I'm Simon. I'm the SNAP program analyst. Hallie and Megan also SNAP program analysts. So let me just open up the floor now. I think we've been answering questions as they've come in, but folks can feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat, put them in the Q&A in case you missed something. I'll highlight again, we're going, this is being recorded. We're uploading it to the FNS website, so it'll be easy for you to access. If folks can't find it there, we're able to email it out to you as well. We can email the link. That would be easier than forwarding out the presentation, I think. Just looking for other questions. I'm not seeing anything come in, but I'll give it another minute. While they're coming in, I do just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. We have over 100 people registered for today's event. So really an exciting time for us. And, absolutely looking forward to, reading your proposals in the future. Kenneth just requested, yes, the slide deck will be available, Kenneth, on the website. Okay. I think there was yes. We did get a question on ENT related, an ENT related question. I'm going to follow up on that in the chat with whoever asked it. So let me just, and the question was, I'm just trying here, it's not letting me send everyone. So the question was, is funding limited to SNAP only, or does it include SNAP ENT? You can submit an ENT related project if you think it falls within one of the issue criteria, but you can't use PTIG funding to cover the state share of the 50% ENT state match. So for example, if the project costs $1 million, you should request $1 million. You should not request $500,000 and say you will use that for the 50% state share of ENT. Okay, now I'm seeing some more questions in the Q&A. I'm not sure what the SFL, I think that's a question for Anna, perhaps. Anna, the SF, yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to say, send me an email and we will have a conversation if you lobby. I think that's a no-no, but sometimes your definition and ours could be different. So definitely send me an email and we can flesh it out a little bit.
And the question was about a form, the SFLLL. Can you just share out that question again, Anna? I think you're more familiar on.
Sure, sorry about that. So the SFLLL is just, it's a lobbying form, and it asks basically, does your organization lobby? If, you know, what type of lobbying do you do? And it's actually pretty short, but we are kind of particular, and I just want to make sure that there's not going to be any conflict of interest or any ethical issues that come up with lobbying. So the question was, should we reach out and have a conversation if our organization does lobby? And my answer is yes. Do reach out, send me an email, and then I'll ask more questions, and we can sort of flesh out what's going on and see if this is an issue that would prevent you from being eligible for applying.
Thanks, Anna. Nina, I see another question in the chat. Is there a place to view past awarded projects? Yes. Visit the PTIG webpage that I just highlighted before. I'll go back to it. If you go to this page, and again, you'll be able to, I'll send out the link. You'll be able to navigate down on the page. You can see past grantees there. I think it goes to FY 2012. So just some other questions that I saw in the chat that I can share out with folks. Can institutions of higher education apply? Yes, they fall under the eligible entities. The second WebEx is going to be a repeat. Okay, Anna, another question for you, perhaps. How difficult is it for a faith-based organization to obtain a DUNS number?
I don't know if it would be any more difficult for a faith-based organization versus anybody else to obtain one. I think they say several days, and whatever that means. So I say allow at least 5 business days. But again, I would look into getting one right away. And if you don't need it, you don't need it. But if you do, then you have it.
Thanks, Anna. So I see another question here. What are the CalFresh outreach activities that would or would not be allowed? I think I would potentially need more. Let me go back to the outreach slide. Give me a second here. It's really tucked away under there. But I think beyond the slide, I would just recommend to follow up so that we can, review your question more thoroughly. I'm going to try and look to the slide now, but Cindy, can you please just follow up post presentation on that one? Can we apply with a pilot study? I would say we've had grantees in the past that featured pilot projects that were geared towards, turning them into something larger. If that makes sense. Okay. I'm seeing, yes, Kathy, the recording will be available. Not seeing any other questions come in, but I'll give it another minute. Looks like folks are leaving the line. Okay. Going once, going twice. So I do just want to thank everybody again. Please be on the lookout for before when we send out any additional information. All this will be on the website for links. We have the questions recorded, and I'll be saving them after before we close out, so that we have them memorialized. And I do thank folks for their time. And everyone have a great day.